All right, everyone, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. It's maybe a minute or two past 1. My name is Katie Buller-Gozwish, and I'm the Executive Director of U.S. Catholic Sisters Against Human Trafficking. I am here in our national office in Brighton, Michigan. I am so very pleased today to be able to welcome Tony Talbot from the University of Dayton. Tony has a BA in History and Government from Columbia College, an MA in International Affairs from Ohio University, and a PhD in Political Science from Arizona State University. Tony is a veteran of both the Army National Guard and the U.S. Navy, and he teaches in the Political Science Department and the Human Rights Studies program of the University of Dayton, and has done so for the past 15 years. That also includes him teaching one of the first undergraduate courses in the country regarding human trafficking. Outside of academia, Tony chairs the Coalition for Abolition Ohio's general meetings and serves on the Ohio Attorney General's Human Trafficking Coalition. So before we jump right in, we'll go ahead and start with a prayer, and then I will turn it over to Tony. Let us recall that we are in God's holy presence. Gracious God, we thank you for today's opportunity to gather together in this virtual format and for the blessing of divine protection for all who are exploited and enslaved, for those forced into labor, trafficked into sexual slavery, and denied freedom. We ask you to release them from their chains, grant them protection, safety, and empowerment, restore their dignity, and provide them a new beginning. Show us how we might end exploitation by addressing its causes. Help us reach out in support of survivors of human trafficking. Make us instruments of your Spirit for their liberation. For this we pray through our Lord Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. And I think we'll go ahead and turn it over to Tony.
Great. Hello, thank you very much, Katie. Thanks for having me today. And I think my video is still can't start. It keeps saying my video.
Tony, I can't hear you or see you.
Okay. Well, I can hear you fine. Maybe, hang on.
All right, hang on, everybody. I'm trying to get in touch with Tony he says, I hear you and my mic is working.
So are you muted?
Okay, I'm not quite sure. Okay, someone said that they can hear us both. And another person says we can hear Tony. Can you hear me? Okay, I think we just can't see Tony then is the issue. Okay, I can see you.
There we go. All right, thank you. Can you hear me fine now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Zoom is odd sometimes, but in-person meetings can be odd sometimes too. So that's how I look at it. You could take the wrong turn, get off on the wrong floor or whatever. So it's all 6 of one and a half dozen of the other. But thank you, Katie. I appreciate that. Welcome. Thanks to you and to Teresa, my good friend, who invited me to come speak today as well. And thanks to everyone who's online and listening. I have, of course, some slides that I want to share. And today I really want to talk about illicit massage businesses, erotic massage, et cetera, the link with human trafficking and various forms of exploitation, and really sort of give an overview of it, talk about some specifics in Ohio, where we've done most of the work, and a quick snapshot of Colorado as well, where I've done a little bit of work, and as well as some national stuff, and then end with the beginnings of a plan on disrupting exploitation and trafficking at illicit massage businesses. So I'm going to share my screen now. I will be going through the slides rather quickly, but this is being recorded. I can share the presentation with folks as well. And then I will we'll have time at the end to try to address any questions and answers that folks have. Great, and I'm going to go ahead and stop my own video for now. Hopefully everyone can see my slide. Okay. As Katie said, I run Abolition Ohio, which is an anti-human trafficking coalition for the Miami Valley part of Ohio, basically the greater Dayton region in Southwest Ohio. And I also am the director of advocacy at the University of Dayton Human Rights Center. Basic outline of what we're going to be talking about. As you can see, just basically a big overview, a national look, and then focus in on a couple of states, and then come back really to Ohio and what some of the municipal response and some of the local and state efforts have been in Ohio to address trafficking at illicit massage businesses. And then end with a broad disruption, I think, strategy that could be applied in a variety of settings. First, illicit massage businesses, that's the term that we're using now to describe what has long been called erotic massage, erotic spas, Asian massage parlors, et cetera. They're essentially usually storefronts, businesses that advertise massage, but as part of the services offered at these massage are commercial sexual services also, often called happy ending spas, where after the massage, that'll end with a commercial sex act for an additional fee, or most often a quote unquote tip to the provider. And this commercial sex act is most often either masturbation or oral sex that's performed on the customer. The customers are almost exclusively men, and the providers are almost always, as we're going to find out, women, often 30 to 50-year-old women, most often from East Asia, primarily China, but also Korea and Southeast Asia, Thailand, Philippines, etc. With some exceptions, but that's the majority of victim workers in illicit massage businesses where they're from. Increasingly, just like most other forms of commercial sexual exploitation and society in general, the internet is becoming an increasingly important factor in the business model of illicit massage businesses. So the internet's used for to recruit workers, to help control workers, for advertising, and then reviews. And we've been using the advertising and reviews part that illicit massage businesses do as a means to investigate and to perform research on this industry. There have been multiple just really good studies that have been done over the last few years nationally on illicit massage businesses, or IMBs. We estimate that there's well over 10,000, maybe more than 12,000 IMBs active currently in the US. They've been found in all 50 US states. They generate at least $3.8 billion in revenue every year. And one of the things that is fairly unique to this venue where trafficking takes place is that at illicit massage businesses, often it's not just commercial sexual exploitation or sex trafficking, it's also forced labor. So it's one of those venues where both labor trafficking and sex trafficking can overlap. According to calls to the National Human Trafficking Hotline across the whole country, when they have cases, calls that have been confirmed as coming from victims or survivors, or that are high probability accurate tips, they've determined that from 2017 to 2019, illicit massage businesses were the #1 venue for reports of sex trafficking within the United States, and #2 venue in 2020. They don't have more recent data available, just up to 2020 currently. And there's been a steady increase in the number of cases since 2015 in calls to the national hotline. And you can see top venues for sex trafficking in the US. IMBs were one, far above the next: pornography, residence-based commercial sex, or basically residential brothels, hotel or motel based, and then others dealing with online advertising. Hyrick Research has done really some of the great work on looking at IMBs across the country. They did a mapping out using a very similar methodology that we used at the state level across the whole country. They looked at, there are online commercial websites that advertise illicit massage and also provide review by customers of illicit massage parlors. And they used one of these sites, such as Rub Maps, and mapped out all of the open illicit massage parlors that they found in the US. There were also some in Hawaii and Alaska. It's just, this is just when we started really looking at illicit massage businesses a few years ago here at the Human Rights Center in Appalachian, Ohio, we tried to look at the sort of larger sort of structure of why this happens, and started to frame it really as a human rights issue and not just a criminal justice issue. And some things that really emerged rapidly were that illicit massage businesses are inherently racist undertakings. They exploit vulnerabilities that are really prevalent in BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, especially among Asian migrant women. They play off stereotypes of Asian women as being submissive, as being highly sexualized, et cetera. And at the same time, this went along with a surge in anti-Asian racism that was related to the spread of the coronavirus and the COVID pandemic, resulting in acts of violence against worker victims at IMBs who were Asian. When there's another great quote, a really great survivor scholar, Brooke Parker Bello, looking at human trafficking in general, but it applies that when you intersected with centuries of racial trauma and discrimination, human trafficking is an unfathomable atrocity on the mind, soul, and body of each marginalized victim. Just really looking at the intersectionality of these different forms of exploitation, marginalization, and objectification that take place. Illicit massage businesses are clearly a violation of human rights. They violate multiple international standards. Most simply and most directly, when you look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, um, this clearly violates the articles of the Universal Declaration and regarding slavery and servitude, false imprisonment, and the right to work without discrimination. There are many other rights violations that occur as well. We noticed during COVID-19, then this probably won't surprise any of you folks either. Around the world, we saw an increase in forms of exploitation, forms of violence, gender-based violence, domestic violence, child abuse, sexual abuse, etc. Issues that were greatly exacerbated by a lot of the forced isolation, the people having to stay in their homes, and other policies relating to trying to control the public health response to the coronavirus pandemic. So what we've seen with COVID is it's increased the individual level vulnerabilities that at-risk folks experience, as well as systemic vulnerabilities. Vulnerable populations have been pushed from maybe a somewhat illicit economy into fully illegal economies. As an example, what I mean by that in IMBs is we saw with a public health response to coronavirus, many massage parlors and spas across the country were shut down for a time because of no public gathering and to try to stop the spread of COVID. The women who were being victimized at the IMBs didn't have the option to just then stay home and not work and collect some kind of financial assistance or anything like that. They had to continue working. So many of them, either they're traffickers or exploiters, or making the decision on their own out of desperation and no other alternative, shifted from doing massage with an additional commercial sex act to full-on residential brothels. So they gave up even that facade of being a massage parlor and switched fully to an underground illegal commercial sex enterprise. Additionally, COVID-19 disrupted victim services operations, outreach to at-risk populations and victims, and law enforcement, investigations, raids, et cetera. So we're still trying to figure out what all of the disruptions to, or the impact of COVID-19 has been, and what all these disruptions have done. But it's been, it seems to have been extreme. We'll see a few things in the data as I move forward. They sort of point at this as well. We did a series of interviews with advocates, victim advocates, and survivors, massage therapists, law enforcement, investigators, prosecutors, researchers, scholars, et cetera. And I think this quote was really very emblematic of the profound fear and the need for cultural sensitivity when attempting to serve these victims and interact with the victims of illicit massage. Please don't kill me. I don't want to die here alone. My family can't even collect my body. I'll be a soulless ghost floating across this foreign land. That additional level of fear, beyond just the fear that the trafficker is controlling them. I mean, they're worried about their even post in death and afterlife. The fear continues. Want to look at the different sort of components of the system. IMB owners and managers. First, illicit massage businesses are often run by families. Women often act as the face or the manager. It'll be a woman who's managing the massage parlor. Customers will come in. She will direct them back to the various worker victims, in the back. Like I said, there have been several studies that have looked at this at various levels in the Houston area, some national stuff, some stuff that we've done here. And it seems there's an average, usually most IMBs across the country or in these studies are averaging about 12 customers per day. Within the US, according to Hyrick Research, about 84% of IMBs are actually Chinese operated. So either operated by Americans, Chinese living in America, Chinese Americans, or but even international Chinese networks controlled by international Chinese networks. And these are very sophisticated criminal enterprises that are dealing with international migrant flows, are dealing with international capital flows, are exploiting and manipulating these women for profit, and are also exploiting and manipulating their finances and their debt in order to make money. They're like loan sharks, they are traffickers, they are providing goods and services and the equipment needed to set up a massage spa to people within their network. I think a lot of folks have no idea how sophisticated and well organized these networks actually are. Looking at the victim workers, most often, as I said before, they're middle-aged women from East Asia. They usually enter the US on work visas or tourist visas. They go deep into debt to get here for this opportunity to try to earn some extra money. That debt is then manipulated and used as a means of control and a means of making profit off of that debt by the traffickers or the IMB organizers. Fraud, coercion, sometimes violence and force are being used as well. And these victim workers are in isolation. They're often sent to places where they don't speak English and there's nobody around them who speaks Chinese, or they're except for the traffickers, the managers, the people within the IMB itself. So they can't really communicate with anybody outside. They are kept in isolation. They're off controlled, sometimes live within the massage spa, the spa establishments. Often they're live in like many people living in a single apartment building or a single an apartment within a building or a single house, and move back and forth and kept in isolation during their time at the IMB. Looking at the customers on that side, the sex buyers, a lot of folks call them Johns. I try to avoid that now. It's sort of unfair to anybody named John who's not a sex buyer. They often call themselves hobbyists or mongers. Sometimes you even hear the term punter, which really came out of England, but it's spread around the world. Sex buyers in general are 99% male. There are female sex buyers, but they're very rare. When you look at them sociologically or demographically, the typical US sex buyer and the typical US male are very similar. Basically, there's no single sort of silver bullet or smoking gun or indicator, red flag that can really point out a sex buyer versus a non-sex buyer. The studies have been all over the place for the decades, but the best numbers we have now probably are within the United States, about 14% of American males have bought sex at some point in their life, which a much smaller percent, just a couple of 2 or 3% have bought sex within the last year. People in the military or military veterans, folks with military service, are much more likely to have bought sex at some point in their life and are slightly more likely to have bought sex within the last year than folks without military service. Has to do with probably a culture of permissiveness and acceptance within the military. Now, within these, the group of sex buyers, there are what we call high frequency sex buyers. And so this is a subset of that overall, 14% of American men who've purchased sex at some point in their life. High frequency sex buyers, the people who are buying it regularly, tend to be wealthier, making over $100,000 a year. They tend to be white, educated, in their 50s. And then within this group, there's really what we can call the very high frequency sex buyers, the men who are purchasing monthly or weekly, which is about 1 in 4 of those. And for those folks, the people who purchase sex the most often, IMBs are their favorite venue for commercial sexual. looking at Ohio, we, similar to that map I showed you earlier of the US, we mapped out erotic massage spas, parlors, etc., by advertisements and reviews on Rub Maps and Adult Search, which are two commercial sex websites. Then we mapped them to, like I said, put them on this map of Ohio. You can see they're primarily clustered along interstates and in urban areas, but there are some in rural areas as well. And there were about 300 in Ohio when we did this in. This was early 2021 is when we did this study, or that part of the study. Within Ohio, the Ohio Revised Code basically says it's illegal to advertise massage with the suggestion or promise of sexual activity. That was sort of a good idea law with really good intentions. It hasn't had much of an impact at all. Almost every case where someone's been charged under that statute has been thrown out of court because the judge will basically say it's unfair to single out massage using sex to sell because almost all products use sex to sell in one way or the other, all kinds of different industries. So it's kind of hard, sort of an unfair restriction upon massage. But these are some ads, sample ads from the Dayton area. The review at the top, just to show that this has been going on for a long time, is 10 years old. It says, if you're looking for an HE, a happy ending, this place will deliver. I've been here several times. They offer both 30 and 60-minute sessions. When you roll over, you'll be at full attention, and then the happy ending price is negotiated. All I've ever gotten is a hand job, usually $40 tip for that. That was from a spa in Dayton. Here's ads from spas within the Dayton area. As you can see, young 100%, sexy 100%, Asian goddess, body, etc. And pictures of young, attractive women wearing like lingerie to advertise massage. There's a definite disconnect there if this was a legitimate massage therapy. Some more examples. Once again, up at the top, 100% grand opening, stunning young Asian girl available now, sweet girl. That's how they're advertising massage. This other one down in the Cincinnati area, you can see these are supposedly the massage, the masseuses, the massage providers that are on staff at this illicit massage business. And the other ad, once again, from a Dayton Dayton provider, super Asian model, amazing skill, beautiful, pretty, and hot. 3 girls working, daydream massage, 100% young, new feeling waiting you. New. A lot of red flags for trafficking there, showing potentially talking about young girls, talking about the new, so it's a high turnover rate, so people maybe are being shifted around from place to place. And then, of course, obviously using sex or the promise of sex to sell their massage. Looking at the national hotline statistics for Ohio. So we looked at the national ones earlier. These are just for the state of Ohio. In 2019, you can see illicit massage spas and businesses over here on the right column toward the bottom was the #1 venue in Ohio for sex trafficking. And there were about 450 human trafficking cases reported to the national hotline from Ohio in 2019. In 2020, with the COVID pandemic, moving on and maybe showing some types of disruptions to these numbers, and additionally, potentially increased awareness raising and law enforcement activity within Ohio. We're not really sure, but there was a severe drop in human trafficking cases. So it went from 450 cases the year before to just 310 cases reported in 2020. And if you look at the top venues for sex trafficking in the right column, illicit massage businesses have dropped completely off after being the top one or two in Ohio for about 5 years. It just dropped completely off in 2020. I'm not sure why. We'll see what happens when they release the 2021 and 2022 stats, whether it's come back and this was a temporary aberration or if something's really changed. We did a LexisNexis search, basically that big data set looking at all Ohio-based news sources and looking at massage and human trafficking or prostitution together, and then sorted through those articles. And we found about 134 unique articles since from the 1980s on. That's not really that many articles, considering how severe this problem is. And those articles were either talking about law enforcement actions, raids, arrests, investigations, convictions, et cetera, or municipal actions. What we mean by that is primarily maybe inspections of parlors or passing ordinances to help control illicit massage, things along those lines. And then a big miscellaneous category that contained a whole bunch of other stuff, like references to big national cases that had some reference to Ohio, or awareness raising or educational opportunities, organizations talking about how big a problem illicit massage was, et cetera, but not linked specifically to a specific like government action. You can see the articles by decade. This was the average number of articles per year by decade. So in the 1980s, there was only really about less than one article per year. During the 1990s, you can see, by the 1990, it increased to one article a year. It was less than one in the 80s. By the 2000s, there were about 3 articles per year. 2010 is where it peaked at 7 articles per year, and it dropped off from 2010 to 2020, it dropped down to about 5 articles per year. So even though it's showing an increasing coverage within the media, that's still only a handful of articles per year for the whole state. This is not getting the media attention that it deserves. We looked at law enforcement actions as well across the state. And as you can see, most law enforcement actions were in urban areas and in basically all over the state, or all over urban areas of the state, and a few rural areas as well. And you can see they were pretty sporadic. There were very few initially. This is when they occurred. So go back to the 80s once again. This is one. So there was like 1 a year at this point. Wherever it drops down, there were none that year. It picked up a little bit, and the peak was in 2013, 2014, around that period. There was a big series of spas, of arrests and investigations in Northeast Ohio that were shut, where spas were shut down. And that was the real peak of law enforcement activities. Just to contrast, looking at the state of Colorado real quickly, did the same mapping exercise. Colorado had 575 IMBs were advertised, and the same as Ohio, there were 300 that were still thought to be open and operating within the state. You can see they're all, this rectangle is the state of Colorado. So most of them are along what they call the Front Range, which is where most people in Colorado live. The Rocky Mountains are right here, are in the center, so it's just east of the Rockies, where Denver and all the big cities are, but there are a few scattered around in smaller cities and towns and rural areas as well. The Colorado state law, they did enact a law about to regulate massage back in 2008. They were one of the late states to do so. We're going to contrast that in a minute with Ohio, which was the first state in the country to regulate massage. So they were 39th in the nation. And they did start considering human trafficking and exploitation within their massage regulation. By 2016, they did add human trafficking to a list of offenses that could cause the state to revoke or deny granting a license to a massage establishment. We looked at some local ordinances in Colorado. Just very briefly, Denver has a code on massage, but it had one of the better ones, and it was very, very light level of regulation for local ordinances. Fort Collins, another big city we looked at, there was no specific reference to massage in the municipal code. So very spotty coverage within Colorado. Light state law and regulation, and then very spotty local ordinances concerning massage trafficking across Colorado. And looking at the national hotline stats to compare them with the Ohio ones, you can see they had a lot fewer cases reported. Ohio had 450 cases reported in 2019. Colorado only had 181, but illicit massage spas and businesses, IMBs, was the #1 venue for sex trafficking. And in 2020, same thing, about the same level of reporting, and illicit massage businesses, it was tied for #1 with residence-based commercial sex. So it is the primary source of calls concerning cases to the national hotline within the state of Colorado. Did another LexisNexis search, just a quicker one for Colorado. And we found 800 articles since 1980. Very few of the articles per year, like 1 or 2 articles per year, until there was a lot more coverage surge in 2008. But we didn't have time for Colorado to do the more detailed analysis about what the articles were about. But they were, so it has been an issue, and it's been covered by the media in Colorado, potentially at a higher rate than in Ohio. Going back to Ohio, looking at some state and local efforts, because this is where we spent most of the time in this research. One of the researchers we talked to basically said, quote, "The brothel owners, the madams, the loan sharks, the organized criminals are the ones who work out how to manipulate the system. Just because it's legalized or criminalized or whatever doesn't change the fact they're still going to make money off of these women." Just really, really highlighting the level of sophistication and adaptability of the criminal networks that are running these illicit massage businesses, or IMBs. Ohio, as I said, at the state level, has over 100 years regulating massage therapy, but probably because that law was instituted 100 years ago, it only regulates medical massage or therapeutic massage. It does not regulate non-medical or non-therapeutic massage. What people often call relaxation massage is not regulated within the state of Ohio. We find out when we look at city ordinances across the state, even massage therapy is often included in the sections on adult entertainment or sexually oriented businesses. So legitimate massage therapists still have to deal with this sort of culture of massage being seen as a sexual oriented business or as a form of adult entertainment instead of as a medical practice. And that causes issues itself. It creates expectations within the general population as to what happens at massage parlors. And many massage therapists will share stories of being confronted by customers who expect more than just a massage when they come in. There's legislation pending, House Bill 81, which passed the House last June, and is currently before a Senate committee right now. Depending on how things go politically, it looks like it has a pretty good chance of passing. It's been introduced multiple times in the past. This would close that sort of loophole, getting rid of relaxation massage, and basically saying that all massage conducted at an establishment is considered a form of massage therapy. Therefore, it must be provided by a licensed massage therapist and not just by someone who's an unregulated individual. It would also expand the ability to really to oversee massage and massage enterprises, illicit massage businesses, et cetera, to the townships as well as in the city, within city limits. When a city starts cracking down on IMBs, a lot of times they just literally just shut down within the city limits and move right outside of the city limits. You sometimes can't even tell whether you're still in the city or not. It's just a strip mall outside of the actual jurisdiction of that city. And there, those townships don't have the power to regulate to the same level as the cities. So that's one of the things addressed in this bill. One interesting, promising technique response to dealing with illicit massage businesses has been the use of nuisance abatement. Basically, it's a form of community policing where instead of police pursuing a criminal investigation and conducting raids, etc., usually the municipality will use like zoning codes, health codes, business licensing, other codes and things like that to promote the betterment of life. So there'll be a group of inspectors. When it's done best, there'll be a group of inspectors that are not law enforcement, that are accompanied by victim advocates who are linguistically competent and culturally competent and trauma informed, who will go into the business, will basically check everything out, will make connections with the victim workers. They're less threatening. They can build relationships. They can share contact information to connect with them later on. They can address any major health, safety, or other violations that are taking place, and potentially shut down the worst of these establishments in a quick way that doesn't require the resources of a full-on law enforcement investigation and criminal cases. There have been successful abatement programs to combat IMBs. Two big examples are in Houston and in Columbus, where this is continued to be used. I think there's a lot more that needs to be done on this front, but it's a really interesting sort of non-violent, non-threatening, non-law enforcement approach to trying to regulate these entities. Very quickly, we looked at all cities within the greater Dayton region, within the Miami Valley, and we did a in-depth evaluation of their municipal codes, looking at how they deal with massage. We came up with 9 criteria or characteristics that we use to assess the quality of or the thoroughness of the municipality's response to illicit massage businesses. Do they talk about the unlawful advertising? Do they talk about regulating operating hours? Do they talk about entrances? Illicit massage businesses will often have highly controlled entrances where you have to be buzzed in, or the entrances around back or hidden so people can't see who's coming and going. A municipality can say that a massage enterprise can't do that and must have a normal business entrance instead of some kind of hidden entrance. A lot of times they operate late at night instead of during normal business hours. So you can regulate that as well and change those operating hours. There's lots of things municipalities can do. Here's some of some more. And just like, as I said, you can, anyone who really wants to know can look at the report that we've done or get these slides. But we evaluated all these cities and we found most were fairly weak when it came to massage therapy regulation, or IMB, what we consider IMB regulation, I guess is a good way to put it. There were a total of 9 criteria, and the most criteria that were met were by the city of Centerville, which is a suburb of Dayton, which had 7 out of the 9. And then the city of Dayton itself, which is the largest city that we looked at within this region, had no section of its municipal code specifically that talked about massage or illicit massage. And it varied, like I said, pretty extensively across the other ones. These detailed, there's detailed reporting on this within the report that I'll share with you. So putting all this together just for the next 3 or 4 minutes, so we have time for Q&A. What do we do about all this? I'm presenting all this information, but the goal is not just to publish a report. The goal is not just to give a presentation. The goal is to actually give people the tools that they need so that they can start working to disrupt illicit massage businesses. Very simply, at the highest level, a basic strategy for disrupting illicit massage businesses. I think it's based on 3 main components. Starting at the bottom of this. First, think of it as a business because it's being done because the owner operators can make a high profit out of this. So what we need to do is reduce consumer demand for illicit massage. We need to increase the cost of doing business of the illicit massage managers, owners, and traffickers who are involved. And we really need to work on reducing the vulnerabilities of in at-risk groups. So it sort of hits the supply side, the demand side, and then goes after the criminal actors as well. To reduce demand, the two main ways to do that are to increase the criminal consequences of buying sex. We're starting to see that the Ohio Attorney General, for example, is very much going after sex buyers now, trying to basically end demand for commercial sex. And this includes at illicit massage businesses. And you can also start working on cultural change, changing social norms, increasing the social consequences of buying sex, basically making it something that is less, currently it's seen as acceptable or at least tolerated by many, many people. Let's change that so it's no longer accepted or tolerated. So culture change and improving the laws and increasing penalties for sex buyers will reduce demand. To increase the cost of doing business, essentially traffickers do what they do, including in illicit massage businesses, because there's a very low risk to doing business and a very high potential reward. They can make a lot of money, and they have a very low chance of being investigated, of being arrested, and a very low chance of being convicted. So to change that, let's sort of reverse that. Let's increase the risk and try to reduce the reward. So we need better laws, better enforcement, better training for law enforcement. We need better services for the victims, culturally informed, culturally competent, trauma-informed, and linguistically competent services. Because if you can make the victim workers feel safe and deal with them as they need to be dealt with respect and protecting them, putting them at using a victim-centered approach, you will actually improve and increase their participation in criminal cases. They'll become better witnesses. They'll be more likely to press charges. They'll be more likely to cooperate with law enforcement, which will help you go after the traffickers. And then, of course, public education and awareness so that the public knows what IMBs look like, knows how to report them. For example, they can give tips to law enforcement. Giving those tips will give law enforcement probable cause to investigate and can help, once again, increase that cost of doing business because it increases the chance of being identified, being investigated, being arrested, and hopefully being convicted of the traffickers. Finally, reducing the vulnerabilities. To reduce the vulnerabilities, I mean, the big thing we have to do are the big structures. Reducing racism, reducing poverty, reducing misogyny, and improving gender rights. There's a lot we really need to do. We can also more specifically focusing at-risk populations. We need to improve services for victims and survivors, often at the port of entry where they come in. Very few worker victims from rural China are showing up in Columbus, Ohio as their first stop. They're coming into New York, or they're coming into LA, potentially Chicago, and being moved around from there. So really helping and supporting the outreach and the service providers in those places, like in Flushing Meadow in Queens, where the which is a major port of entry and community of these Chinese women when they're coming in. We need to, once again, do awareness raising, outreach services for that risk populations, let them know knowledge is power, let them know about this manipulation, let them know what their response and recourse can be. And then of course, supporting the service organizations as much as we can through fundraising, volunteering, et cetera. Research, good scholarship, all these things that can help them improve their services. Putting it all together, basically you start at the bottom of this chart and work your way up. It's a basic sort of rough theory of change. There's a bunch of these different activities that you can take to shift buyer attitudes and social acceptance, to strengthen laws, to improve the law enforcement response, improve victim services, and support outreach and services for at-risk populations. That should work to reduce demand, increase the cost of doing business, and reduce the vulnerability. And should achieve then our main objectives of reducing sex and labor exploitation and trafficking and reducing the overall number of IMBs. These are things that can be adopted and taken on by advocacy organizations, by state governments, by municipal governments, concerned individuals, etc. And all of this is covered in detail in our report, which is on our website. Just go to abolitionohio.org and you'll see a section on reports and research. You can click on that and it'll go to that report. You can read it online or download a copy and it'll cover all this in a lot more detail. I know that was a lot, it went really quick, but thank you very much. I think we have a few minutes perhaps for some questions if there are any.
Thanks so much, Tony. That was really amazing. Do you guys have any kind of information on, I know you did Ohio and Colorado. Do you think that what's happening in Ohio is indicative of other states as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think in general, I think this issue we've seen by Hyrick Research, who's done this national research on this, and Polaris, who's done national research. There's over 10,000 of these IMBs across the country. They're in every state. This is a rapidly growing criminal enterprise. It's a rapidly growing form of human trafficking or exploitation. Even if it doesn't rise to the level of trafficking, it's still a form of labor exploitation and commercial sex. Venues for illegal commercial sex is taking place. So it's happening across the country. The responses to it are really varied. I've seen in some states there have been strong responses. We're beginning to do a little bit of that work now. Like Ohio is beginning to take this more seriously and respond. Texas, especially the greater Houston area, as I said, is taking this more seriously and trying to come up with a better response. But other states are pretty much ignoring it. And there's still a handful of states that have no regulation of massage at all, at least a few. States like maybe Wyoming, North Dakota, et cetera. Really out west, low population states that flat out don't regulate massage. Those states are almost certainly seeing a lot more exploitation and trafficking in their massages because there's no oversight at all. So it varies dramatically, but it is a national problem. I don't know about globally, but it's definitely across all 50 states.
Well, thank you for that. We had a situation, so I'm in Columbus, Ohio. Worthington is a suburb of us, pretty high end economically, definitely, upper middle white suburban area. And there I had noticed a massage parlor popped up and next to a couple, very conveniently located, next to a couple low-end motels and a bar that was basically open about 20 hours a day. And I posted it on my Facebook page. I actually went into the massage parlor, not that I'm advocating people to go out and do that, but I went in and it was about 12 a.m., 1 a.m. And there was an older Asian lady working and, said I asked how much a massage was and she said it was like $30, which is incredibly low for, a legitimate massage. I just said thank you and left, and I posted it on Facebook for people to know, because I have a lot of people in that area. People that live in that town were and just couldn't believe it. Several contacted the chief of police. He told them that he was not worried about that he had other things to worry about. They contacted a few other law enforcement and got no response whatsoever. Just not interested in helping. which is really sad because there were victims, right, that are working in there. And so, and we even, you know, cross-referenced it to BedPage, to a couple ads also, like you showed, stating, you know, hey, we have new women working here. So it was very obvious for us. It really made the residents very mad, but they felt like they couldn't do anything about it. So I like what you said about, you know, we need to talk more about this, try to reduce that demand. We did have a big bust, as Tony knows, a couple years ago in the Columbus area of massage parlors. But again, it was very difficult to even assist the victims because of the language barrier and just the labor trafficking aspect to it. And so it's as all trafficking is, it's a very difficult issue to break into and to change people's mindset, right?
Right. Yeah, thanks so much for, I mean, well, of course, I mean, that's just what you do, but taking that extra step to really try to publicize it and get it out there and do something about it. But that response to the police chief is exactly what we were talking about, that change in culture that has to take place.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, they're like, oh, it's no harm. You know, nothing's going on there. You're just it's the nanny state, quote unquote, just overstepping itself. They have no idea about this. And for some people, the fact that it's immigrant women who are suffering makes it less sympathetic victims. These same people would be all over it if they thought it was a child sex trafficking ring. But if it's a migrant and it's maybe labor trafficking, well, those folks need jobs anyway, quote unquote. So this is probably better off here doing this than back home. And there's a lot of myths about this that just, it basically is showing anti-immigrant sentiment and racism in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I liked, I think that that's something that everybody can do, is go to their Facebook page or wherever and, you know, just say, hey, you know, type in a little fact that you learned today about that this is not an innocent, you know, innocent crime, that there are people that are suffering from this. Somebody had asked on here, Sister Margaret, what is RubMap?
It's just a website that is a place for advertising these erotic massage across the country. You can look by state, by city, and if you're a member of RubMap and get approved, then you can actually look at reviews by members of what kind of services were available there.
Yeah, it's not something I would suggest many of the sisters go on and do. It can be very shocking to read. It's very explicit. So
I put tame images up on the advertising I showed were pretty tame.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody would like to know, how does this compare to trafficking in hotels and motels in terms of percentages?
You can look, that's a good question. We showed by looking at the best data we have for that would be the national hotline, I think. And looking back at that, you can see it fluctuates back and forth, but generally since 2016, 2017 or so, you can look on the National Human Trafficking Hotline page and find out for certain, but illicit massage has been above hotel-based sex trafficking venues. More calls for coming about illicit massage than are coming about hotel-based commercial sex. So it seems like it's a bigger issue, and probably a higher proportion of trafficking is taking place in illicit massage businesses than in hotels. But it's really hard. But also an illicit massage business is an establishment on a storefront where people can see, so it can get reported more often than what might take place behind closed doors in a hotel room, which is harder to see and report.
Right. Yeah. But then too, if you think of like the percentage of massage businesses are smaller than the number of hotels out there. So it seems like it would be even a bigger problem. That was very surprising to me, that those calls were more than double for a hotel. So yeah, that was shocking.
It shocked me too. That's what convinced us to really start looking at this. I think it's what convinced Polaris to do their report back in, I think, 2018.
Mhm.
they started seeing this increase in calls about illicit massage. So we all knew it was a problem, but we didn't know it was this big a problem.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then I think you're gonna answer, well, somebody has asked about what states you're focusing on.
We've been primarily focusing in Ohio because we're trying to try to get Ohio to change their law and to change their response. But as I said, this report also has that national section in the beginning.
Mhm.
And I did Colorado because I gave a presentation in Colorado early this year. And so I did some more research in Colorado. So I guess that would be the thing. If anybody else wants to invite me to come talk at a state level somewhere, like in New Jersey or wherever else, I'll do more research on that state and add it to this sort of growing database.
That's great. And I think that's very interesting to see how they differ state to state, if at all.
Yeah.
I have a feeling you probably do too, that it's the same everywhere. So yeah. Judy would like to know if you've done any research on this in California.
I'm not direct research in California, just that the national level stuff. And I mean, on that map, which you can see in the report as well, California's got a lot of massage parlors. Many Asian migrants come in through the port of Los Angeles and stay in the California area. And a lot of them are exploited there. And there is a really thriving sex industry, of course, in California. Always has
Right.
been.
Right.
Houston's the other big part in Texas. The
Surprising.
greater Houston, some people consider Houston, Texas to be the commercial sex capital of the US. When you look at the per capita number of brothels, illicit massage parlors, the cantinas, which are basically just brothels or, sex bars in a lot of ways. So
Wow.
I wouldn't expect that of Houston, but
No. And then just let's wrap it up with someone's last question here. What can the average person do regarding IMBs?
I think look at that report, educate yourself more. That's the number one thing. Share the knowledge throughout your contacts and everything else. And if you learn the signs of what IMBs look like, keep your eyes open. And if you see things, report it, make the call to the law enforcement. Law enforcement needs probable cause to investigate.
Right.
So probable cause can come from a citizen making a tip. Even if it's one of those anonymous tips you just leave a message, they review those and they will look at them and they'll say, okay, that's the third tip we've had about this place on this road in Worthington or wherever. Maybe we'll investigate. So
Yeah.
I think that's really it.
Definitely good. Yeah. Is there any way somebody wants to know a way to access your report?
Yes, if you go to, I can put it
That'd be great.
in the chat. It was on that slide. I could put that, actually it's right here.
Great. And then Christine has said that Florida just passed HB 851, requiring all massage workers to receive training on human trafficking and have information posted about human trafficking in their place of business.
That's great.
So
we did that years ago with cosmetologists.
Right. Yeah.
And so we've talked about it for massage therapists as well. If this law passes and all massage in Ohio, all massage providers have to be licensed massage therapists, they will get training, at least most of them as part of their school in recognizing and responding to human trafficking. So a lot of the training for licensed massage therapists includes human trafficking awareness.
Right.
So that part's good.
Yeah. So here's the email or the website and email address to contact Tony for the report. So I just want to thank you so much, Tony. This is just such a, like you said, underreported, under talked about issue regarding human trafficking and how it intersects with racism as well. So thanks for taking the time out to educate everybody on this, and for having the students do the research on it. It's just something we definitely need to know more about and to really get active on. So
great. Yeah, thank you very much, Teresa. I appreciate being invited, and thanks for all the work that you and all the sisters are doing on this issue. It's essential.
thanks. Yeah, we need lots to do. I know. So great. Well, thanks, everybody. We will be sending out an evaluation and a copy of the recording so that you can reference it. And like we said, please post it on social media, what you learned today, so that we can get the word out. Great. All right. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.